as a musician with his piano or violinist with his violin. I just want you to enjoy a point of view which I enjoy.
So he says, Nisargadatta, my advice to you is very simple. Just remember yourself, I am. It is enough to heal your mind and take you beyond. Just have some trust. I don't mislead you. Why should I? Do I want anything from you? I wish you well. Such is my nature. Why should I mislead you? Common sense, too, will tell you that to fulfill a desire, you must keep your mind on it. If you want to know your true nature, you must have yourself in mind all the time, until the secret of your being stands revealed.
Now listen very carefully. The next few minutes, this sounds a bit pompous, but it's true. The next few minutes could be the most important minutes in the lives of some of you. If you could grasp this, you've hit upon the secret for awakening. You would be happy forever. You would never be unhappy again. Nothing, but nothing would have the power to hurt you. And I mean that. Nothing. It's like, you take black paint and throw it up in the air and keep throwing black paint in the air. The air is uncontaminated. You don't color the air black. And no matter what happens to you, you remain uncontaminated. You remain at peace. There are human beings, and you know it, who have attained to this. That is what I call human, not what people are generally living. That's what I call being a human being. That's what I call natural. Not this nonsense of being a puppet, jerked about this way and that, having any event or any person tell you how to feel, and then you proceed to feel it. They call it being vulnerable. I call it being a puppet. Want to be a puppet? We press a button and you're down. You like that? So there it is. If you do not identify with any of those labels, first of all, most of your worries cease. What are you generally worried about? Later we'll talk about your fear of disease and death. But ordinarily you're worried about what's going to happen to your career. A businessman, small-time businessman kind of, 55 years old. He's sipping beer somewhere at a bar and he thinks, well, look at my classmates. They've really made it. The idiot, they've made it. What do you mean they've made it? They got their names in the newspapers? You call that made it? Huh? They got their names in the news, in the prison journal, which all the prisoners are reading? And he thinks they've made it. Successful president of a corporation. The other guy has become the chief justice, and somebody else has become this, and the other person has become that. Monkeys, all of them. Who determines what it means to be a success? The main preoccupation of society is to keep society sick. And the sooner you realize that, the better. Every one of them. Most of them. They're loony. They're crazy. You became the president of the lunatic asylum, and you're proud of it. It means nothing. It really means nothing. Being the president of a corporation has absolutely nothing to do with being awake or being happy or being a success in life. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Having a lot of money has nothing to do with being a success in life. You're a success in life when you wake up. When you don't have to apologize to anyone. When you don't have to explain anything to anyone. You don't feel the need to explain anything to anyone. You don't give a damn what anybody thinks of you or what anybody says about you. You have no worry. You're happy. Now that's what I call being a success. I don't know about you. So this poor guy is thinking sadly that he isn't a success like his classmates. Nobody has ever told him that having a good job and being famous and having a great reputation has absolutely nothing to do with happiness or success. Nothing. It's totally irrelevant. And so he's worried about what his children will think about him. What will the neighbors think about him? What will his wife think? He should have become famous. That's what your society and your culture is drilling into your head day and night, and so is mine. People who made it. Made what? Made asses of themselves. Because they drained all their energy in getting something that was worthless. And they're frightened, and they're confused, and they're puppets like the rest. Look at them strutting across the stage. Look how upset they'd get if they had a stain on their shirt. You call that a success? Look how frightened they are at the prospect that they may not be re-elected. You call that a success? So controlled, so manipulated. These are not happy people. These are miserable people. They don't enjoy life. They're constantly tense and anxious. You call that human? And do you know why that happened? There's only one reason. They identified with some label. They identified the I. That was their error. With their money, with their job, with their profession. Heard about the lawyer who says to a plumber, when he's looking at the plumber's bill, he says, "Hey, you're charging nearly $200 an hour. Even I don't make that kind of money as a lawyer." And the plumber said, "Even I didn't make that kind of a money when I was a lawyer." He said, right, So you could be a plumber or a lawyer or a businessman or a priest. That does not affect essential I. That doesn't affect you. I change my profession tomorrow. That's like changing my clothes. I is untouched. Are you your clothes? Are you your name? Are you your profession? Stop identifying with that, because that will come and go. You know what happens when you really understand this? No criticism can affect you. No flattery or praise can affect you either. When someone says you're a great guy, what's he talking about? He's talking about me. He's not talking about I. I is neither great nor small. I is neither successful nor a failure. It is none of these labels. These things come and go. These things depend on the criteria that your society establishes. These things depend on your conditioning. These things depend on the mood of the person who happens to be talking to you right now. They have nothing to do with I. I is none of these labels. Me is generally selfish, foolish, childish, and a great big ass. So when you say, "You're an ass," so you're telling me, haha, I've known it for years. That guy there, the conditioned self, what could you expect? I've known it for years. Why did you identify with him? Silly. That isn't I, that's me. Now, here are those important minutes I was telling you about. You want to be happy uninterruptedly. Happiness is uncaused. Try to understand that. Happiness, true happiness, is uncaused. You cannot make me happy. You are not my happiness. You say to the awakened person, "Why are you happy?" And the awakened person replies, "Why not?" Happiness is our natural state. Happiness is the natural state of little children to whom the kingdom belongs, until they have been polluted and contaminated by the stupidities of our societies and our cultures. To acquire happiness, you don't have to do anything, because happiness cannot be acquired. Does anybody know why? Because you have it already. How can you acquire what you already have? Then why don't you experience it? Because you've got to drop something. You've got to drop an illusion. You don't have to add anything on to be happy. You've got to drop something. Life is easy. Life is delightful. It's only rough on your illusions. You got illusions. You got ambitions. You got greed. You got cravings. You know where they come from? From your having identified with all kinds of labels here.
Reality is what makes the present so vital, so different from the past and future, which are merely mental. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. The real is always with you. You need not wait to be what you are, only you must not allow your mind to go out of yourself in search. All experience is illusory, limited and temporal. Expect nothing from experience. Realization is not an experience.
If we think that happiness is something outside of ourselves, then everywhere we go, everyone we meet, every situation you encounter, without saying so, what you'll really be asking of it is, can you make me happy? And if it can't make you happy, we tend to discard it. Right? Whether it's a person or a place, you know, you go on vacation and it doesn't make you happy and you go, I don't like this place. Why? Didn't make me happy. I don't like it. It has no value. And this even informs our spirituality. Because of course within a human being is a innate desire for happiness. Given the choice, wouldn't you choose to be happy other than unhappy? You know, if you could flick a switch and have one or the other, or you could go to some cosmic grocery store and buy happiness or sorrow, most people, I think, would choose happiness. So it is sort of hardwired into our DNA structure that we would, given the option, we would move toward happiness rather than sorrow. Unfortunately, often our pursuit of happiness is what leads to sorrow, because we often see happiness as something that exists out there. It's in something I can attain, something I can find, something I can own, someone I can own, possess. Or happiness is if everybody would just change. If everybody would just be more like you, you know, then you'd be happy. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of people go around their whole life baffled that everybody doesn't see everything like they do. You know? So, this pursuit, and we bring this pursuit into spirituality. We bring our pursuit of happiness into spirituality, which again is natural because it's a natural thing within you. You're hooked up to prefer happiness over sorrow. And yet, if happiness is held as our highest virtue, our highest calling, if the pursuit of happiness is the most important thing to us, then number one, it will constantly be eluding us, except for some moments, you know. But a happiness that's actually constant will be eluding us. They don't tell you when you are sort of raised to pursue happiness, you know. They don't tell you that your pursuit is actually not going to make you a happy person. Really happy people aren't pursuing happiness. You ever notice? And of course, we think that, of course, they're not pursuing happiness because they've already got happiness. Do you see what I mean? But it's just possible that maybe they've got happiness because they're not pursuing it. You see? But if you don't have it, you think they got it because they pursued it. You see what I mean? And so we keep pursuing. We bring it into spirituality, the same pursuit. I'm looking for happiness. Whether you call happiness nirvana, enlightenment, awakening, God, heaven, whatever it may be, one continues to pursue this elusive quality of existence. You see? But as I said, what's not spoken, what's not told to you, is the pursuit of happiness leads to sorrow. That's what we're not told. We want to be happy, do we not? We want to be happy, but the more we try to be happy, the less happy we actually end up being. It seems like sort of a contradiction, doesn't it? Or a catch-22. That you hook up to want this thing, but the more that you want it, the more you pursue it, the less of it that you really have. You see? And if you get it through your pursuit, you'll be afraid because whatever you can attain, you know that you can just as easily lose. You see? If someone makes you happy, you know you can lose them. Worse than that, you know you will lose them. At some point. They won't last forever any more than you'll last forever. So even if we attain something that gives us a certain type of happiness, we know that whatever we've attained, whatever we've grasped, will not last forever. Whether it's a person or money or even a great spiritual experience. You know? It will not last forever. In the midst of all this pursuit, there is the sacred, you see. And the sacred isn't necessarily the pursuit of happiness, although one wants to be happy. That which is sacred, true, reality. It's a deeper thing within us. That which is sacred has the byproduct of a certain causeless happiness. Because that's the only lasting happiness there is a happiness that has no cause to it. If someone says, "Why are you happy?" and you just don't know. Do you see what I mean? True happiness doesn't have a cause. There's no reason for it. It's not the result of attaining something or finding something, or there's literally no reason for it. And that's the kind of happiness that comes out of the sacred. It's a causeless happiness, a sort of causeless peace. causeless meaning. There's no reason for it. It's just there. It's just the nature of reality is that there's this exuding of well-being. Right?
Reality is what makes the present so vital, so different from the past and future, which are merely mental. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. The real is always with you. You need not wait to be what you are, only you must not allow your mind to go out of yourself in search. All experience is illusory, limited and temporal. Expect nothing from experience. Realization is not an experience.
There is absolutely no difference between me and others, except in my knowing myself as I am. I am all. I know it for certain and you do not. In reality, I am neither hearing nor answering. In the world of events, the question happens and the answer happens. Nothing happens to me. Everything just happens. My destiny was to be born a simple man, a humble tradesman with little formal education. My life was of the common kind with desires and fears. When through faith in my teacher and obedience to his words, I realized my true being, I left behind my human nature to look after itself until its destiny is exhausted. Occasionally an old reaction, emotional or mental, happens in the mind, but it is at once noticed and discarded. After all, as long as one is burdened with a personality, one is exposed to its idiosyncrasies and habits. When I met my Guru, he told me, "You are not what you take yourself to be. Find out what you are. Watch the sense I am. Find your real self." I obeyed him because I trusted him. I did as he told me. All my spare time I would spend looking at myself in silence. And what a difference it made, and how soon. It took me only 3 years to realize my true nature. My Guru died soon after I met him, but it made no difference. I remembered what he told me and persevered. The fruit of it is here with me.
A visitor asked Maharaj why realization of one's true nature is so important.
Without realization, you will be consumed by desires and fears, repeating themselves meaninglessly in endless suffering. Most of the people do not know that there can be an end to pain. But once they have heard the good news, obviously going beyond all strife and struggle is the most urgent task that can be. You know that you can be free, and now it is up to you. Either you remain forever hungry and thirsty, ever losing and sorrowing, or go out wholeheartedly in search of the state of timeless perfection to which nothing can be added, from which nothing can be taken away. In it, all desires and fears are absent, not because they were given up, but because they have lost their meaning.
Seekers who visited Maharaj wanted to know how they too could come to this awareness.
How do you go about finding anything? By keeping your mind and heart on it. Interest there must be, and steady remembrance. To remember what needs to be remembered is the secret of success. You come to it through earnestness. Seek a clear mind and a clean heart. All you need is to keep quietly alert, inquiring into the real nature of yourself. This is the only way to peace. All happens by itself. Neither the seeker nor the Guru does anything. Things happen as they happen. Blame or praise are apportioned later, after the sense of doership appears.
Visitors would ask Nisargadatta about effort and the role that spiritual disciplines play in helping one awaken from the dream of ignorance.
When effort is needed, effort will appear. When effortlessness becomes essential, it will assert itself. You need not push life about. Just flow with it and give your...
So you believe what happens to us at death when the body dies? You don't have a belief?
I don't give it any thought.
You don't? No. Well, did you ever think about it, Eckhart?
I know that the essence of who I am, which is the essence of who you are, is indestructible. I know that directly on a feeling level, and you can also know it even if you talk to a physicist. He will tell you that energy never gets destroyed. It can only transform. Mm-hmm. So whatever it is that animates this physical form, at some point, whatever it is that animates this physical form is going to no longer animate this form. Both my parents died within a space of a few months. And I saw very clearly, each time I saw that my mother's body lying there. A few months later, I saw my father's body lying in the coffin. And I realized the form was still there, but the essence of that being was not present. So the essence of that being was never the form. It was gone. It was no longer there. And then when that which animates the form...
The essence of that being was never the form.
Was never.
The essence of that being inhabited the form.
Yes, because...
And now it no longer inhabited the form.
So you could see there was only a shell there.
Right.
And it's such a clear realization.
Yeah, many people who've seen their loved ones in the casket see that.
Yes. So that which was the life within that form was always invisible. All you could ever see was the form. Maybe you could sense the life within the form, but the life is always invisible. And the life ultimately has no form itself. Mm. And so you see, suddenly somebody dies, the essence is gone, the life within the form is gone.
And it's so strange. And the happiness doesn't come because we got everything we wanted. The happiness comes because we realize we don't need this spiritual presence. It doesn't need anything to be happy. That's the happiness. Does that make sense? It's not the happiness of everything worked out. My life actually ended up just the way I manifested everything I ever wanted. I'm driving a Bentley and in a big house and I'm wearing spiritual clothing. Do you know? It's because from the perspective of that spiritual presence, its nature is well-being, happiness. For no reason. Nothing needs to happen. Things will always happen. Your life will progress, right? It'll continue along its way. You may or may not get the success your mind wanted. You may or may not become the thing that your mind wanted to become. But the nice thing is, none of that ultimately has relevance anymore. It happens or it doesn't. And that's it.
You ask, I don't seem to have any real questions. That is a great insight. There are no real questions in existence. All questions are false, unreal, non-essential. Because life is not a problem to be solved. It is a mystery to be lived. Only the fools go on questioning and go on thinking that some answers will help them. No answer is going to help you. Every answer will create more questions. You can see the whole history of philosophy. Every answer has brought thousands and unnecessary questions. It has not been an answer. It has been a problem. Every answer. Not a single answer has come out of 5,000 years of philosophizing. Philosophy is not much philosophy. It is a philosophy. It is the domain of the fools. Fools are great philosophers because they go on and on. They find out a question, then an answer, then the answer brings 10 questions, then they go on, and the foliage becomes thicker and thicker. The foolishness becomes deeper and deeper. It is good that you cannot find any real questions. Buddha is reported to have said that a meditator loses all his questions. A moment comes when there are no questions left. And that is the moment when you attain to wisdom. Not to answers, but to wisdom. Wisdom is not an answer. It is unfolding of your consciousness. Not that you come to know something, but you start experiencing life in its totality. It is not an answer, it is an experience. And the experience goes on unfolding. So it is not experience, it is more experiencing. It is a process, not an event.
Reality is what makes the present so vital, so different from the past and future, which are merely mental. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. The real is always with you. You need not wait to be what you are, only you must not allow your mind to go out of yourself in search. All experience is illusory, limited and temporal. Expect nothing from experience. Realization is not an experience.
And now let me speak personally for one moment. I could easily look upon my whole life, let's say until the world told me that I was important a few years ago, it happened. Before that, nobody told me I was important. Until that, I could look at my whole life up to that point as one complete disaster. Nothing actually worked out. I tried that for a few years, and then I was at university, and then I did my PhD, and then I gave that up, and then I drifted for 2 years, and then I went into that, and then I tried that, and it didn't. Many things, okay, and then my mother said, okay, now you're 45, what have you achieved? Others have already built up big businesses. And so on the level of story, it was a big disaster. And yet, fortunately, at some point already, I had given up identification with the story. That the story was only my identity up to the age of 29, and it was a very unhappy one, even there. Even when that was my relatively successful. The only worldly success I had was I did well at university up to before I became a graduate student. And it made me happy for 2 weeks. And so isn't it strange that a failed story can produce a flower, the flower of consciousness? And perhaps the flower of consciousness needs the mud out of which it grows. You have the beautiful image of the lotus in Buddhism, the symbol of Buddhism. The lotus flower, it grows, it has its roots in the mud, and it grows out of that. And there's nothing more beautiful in human life than a failed story. And the good news is, every story ultimately fails because the story is based on the forms, it identifies with forms, and no forms last for that long. No building lasts for that long. Eventually it crumbles. All forms are temporary and they are beautiful. The essence that is hiding in each form is the formless one life. That is indestructible. But even this beautiful form, Finton, it is not eternal as a form, but the eternal shines through the forms here. That is why, because the forms are transparent, and you also are not eternal as this form, and yet a transparency is happening in you even as you sit here, so that that which is beyond form, no matter what we call it, stillness, presence, beingness, a deep sense of I am, that before got mixed up with the story of me, and that the preciousness of being is your true specialness. What the egoic self had been looking for on the level of the story, I want to be special, that very thought obscured the fact that you already could not be more special than you are now, but not special in the egoic sense that more than he or more than she. Special in the sense that there is a beauty and preciousness that is the essence of your being, and that is what deep down you can sense. Even the person who is most completely identified with their story and their conceptual sense of self, they feel that there's something precious that is me, but they confuse it with the forms, thought forms. It gets that essence of being, which is formless and timeless, gets mixed up with form, with thought, and a story in the head. And that is what the Buddha calls the fictitious self, the self that the Buddha, even 2,600 years ago, recognized as an illusion, an enormous insight, the greatest, perhaps the greatest insight of all humanity, when he recognized the self is an illusion. And by that he means the self that is identified with any form, thought form, physical form, anything. And that is the illusion, to lose oneself in some form. And then the preciousness of being, that is the essence, that is timeless and formless in every human and in every life form, one could say, incarnates in form. And there's nothing wrong with incarnating in form as long as you know yourself as that which is beyond form. But if you lose yourself in the incarnation, and ultimately you had to do that too, that was part of the totality of how things work. To lose oneself is, as the Buddha called it, suffering. Then you suffer because you don't know who you are anymore. You're looking for yourself in some form, in some thought form, in some physical form that you identify with, which is then also a thought form. Me. And so everybody is looking for the essence of their being, not knowing that the specialness that they look for is already the essence of who they are. But they can only find it when they stop looking for themselves in the future through more. So the one place, it's all like some strange game. The one place where you truly can only find yourself in that one place most humans never look, which is the present moment. They look there for themselves and to feel, I want to be more. On the level of form, you can temporarily be more, that's true. And then that dissolves again. But there is a level within yourself where more does not operate. You do not need to be more. You are already a full expression of the one life. You are already complete on the level of the timeless, the essence of your being. Now, the only reason why you needed time was you needed to be ready to hear this truth and recognize it as a truth. For that, one could say you need time to hear the message that to be who you are, you don't need time. But the paradox is there are still many humans to whom this would be meaningless, and they don't come here. They need, in other words, they need more time. They need to continue to look for themselves, and they need to continue to be frustrated in their search. That is part of the larger design. The frustration is built into human existence. And so that's what the world is for, the so-called world. It is there to frustrate you. And to drive you deeper, to eventually drive you out of identification with form. Because as long as you're identified with form, it is so frustrating. And you can never make it. You can never arrange the forms and accumulate all the forms that you need, you think you need to be yourself. Or sometimes you can do it for a very brief time span. You can suddenly find everything is now working in my life. My health is good, my relationship is great, great money, got possessions, everybody loves me. They all write good things about me. It's all working. My job, my living situation, my finances, my health, my relationships, they're all great. But before long, something there starts to crumble here or there. It's either the finances, or it's the relationship, or it's the living situation. And so it's in the nature of the world of form that nothing stays fixed for very long. And so it starts to crumble again here. You just had sorted it all out. And so that's why humans, they experience life as a series of frustrations. Why can't it work? And so it doesn't work because they are looking for themselves there. They are demanding that the world of form should make them complete and happy. I demand that this world should complete who I am, should give me my sense of self. I just need this and that from there, and then that's all. This is what I demand. And then it's not happening. There's something wrong here. Life isn't working. It seems to be working for everybody else, but it's not working for me. I read in the magazines, all the glossy people, it seems to be working for them. But only if you look at the glossy pictures. If you visited them at home, you would see that it's not working for them either. So it's built into living here is frustration. It's meant to be frustrating. This is the whole, there is a purpose, but people haven't seen it. So it's quite a relief to recognize, first of all, the world cannot make me happy. To demand that situations, people, places, or attainments should complete me or make me happy are bound to be frustrated, whether I attain or do not attain. Okay, so that looks very negative, doesn't it? And that's why when you don't go deeper, when you only see the surface, you see, oh, all is vanity, as the Old Testament prophet said. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. I've seen it all. I can't remember the exact words, but I'm giving you a free translation. I've seen it all, I've done it all, and it's all completely meaningless. That's what he said. And that was probably an elderly man who had tried it all. And now, why did they put this into the Bible? Isn't it very negative to have such a statement that life is completely vain, whatever you can achieve is vanity? They put that in there because when you see the truth of it, you're already becoming free of it. The seeing of the inability of the world to make you happy, the seeing of the short-lived nature of whatever forms you encounter in your life, what is it in you that is able to see that and say, ah, or even laugh? What before was a dreadful story and frustration, you suddenly step out of your own story and see that your own frustrating story is not your personal dilemma, but the human condition. And you derived your sense of self from that, which is nothing personal whatsoever. It's the human condition. And that it's the human condition in its unconscious state, its unenlightened state. And that's what gave you your sense of personal selfhood, and that you wanted to cling to. And now you step out of it by simply seeing it. The seeing means something is arising that is not part of that unconsciousness. And that is why they put it into the Bible, because when you see it, that which can witness that in you, the impermanent nature of all forms, the fictitious nature of the mind-made story, what is it in you that is able to look at that and see, ah, that is not thought, that is the ability to be aware and hold up the mirror of awareness and simply see it there. Oh, or let's say better, the light of awareness shines on it. The light of awareness shines on it and sees what before you were trapped in, the frustrating story of my life. And there's no life that's not ultimately frustrating. It only begins, it loses its frustration when you do not look to the world anymore for your satisfaction or for yourself. When you give up demanding that people, places, situations should make you happy and fulfill you, you don't demand it anymore, then suddenly the ability arises to allow the forms of this moment to be as they are. Because life at this moment already, always is as it is. It always, the isness you cannot doubt. Whatever forms appear in the present moment, it always is as it is. And so most humans are in a conflict relationship with the isness of life. They internally run away from it or reject it, criticize it, complain about it, or look somewhere else. I don't want the isness of this, I want that. So when you see what the world cannot do for you, you no longer, you drop your demand because you see it as absurd to demand something of the world that it cannot deliver. And then you can simply be with whatever is, and this moment are always inseparable, of course. Whatever is at this moment is as it is. I don't demand that this place, even if you come here and you demand that Finton should make me happy, if you came with that demand, you would probably already have experienced frustration here. Because no place is capable of doing that for long, or doing it at all. And so you come here and say there's little things, oh, that shouldn't be here. There's a Royal Air Force base right next to the spiritual center. It doesn't make sense. And so you can complain about that. That shouldn't be. Why did they put that here? They should have gone somewhere else. And then you can say, I came here to find peace, and what do I find? I find screaming jets. I'm going home. And that's only one thing. And you'll find many more. My roommate snores. I can't get a night. I have to wait for the bathroom. And it's not sunny. This is late May and it's not sunny. I should never have come to Scotland. It's not. So if you, just little examples of if you expect a place to fulfill you, it can't do that. In no place, even if you went to a South Pacific island, there would be something that is not quite right. It doesn't fit there. Whatever it is. The sunshine every day, it's too much. The mosquitoes at night, I didn't know about that. They didn't mention them in the travel brochures. So here again, a beautiful opportunity to drop the demand that a particular place should make you happy, or give you peace, or help you find yourself, and simply then bring a yes to whatever form this moment takes. Instead of demanding that the form of this moment should be different in order to satisfy me. So you bring an inner alignment into your relationship with the present moment. Let's put it like that. For the way in which you relate to life, which is always now, only now, an inner alignment comes in with now. So you do not internally separate yourself from now, which is life. Life and now are one. Because that is a source of great frustration and suffering. And so, whatever form this moment takes, there's a jet flying, it may be raining, and then there's some sun coming through. Good, bad, the mind could call this good, could call this bad, but it all is as it is at this moment. And an enormous freedom comes into your life when you drop the demand that this should be other than it is. And then you no longer demand that Finton should make you happy or give you peace. And then every moment, or rather the one moment, is as it is. You go one step at a time to wherever you go, and you look around, and you stand, and you walk, and you sit, and there are people coming, people going, things here, things there. And suddenly, as you bring an inner alignment to the now, something arises within you that has nothing to do with the form that this moment takes. And it arises because you allow the form that this moment takes to be as it is. So in allowing, the form that this moment takes, internally embracing it, saying, I might as well say yes because it is life, because it is the only moment there ever is, the now. I might as well embrace it and say, yes, that's how it is. This does not diminish your ability to change if anything needs changing. Action arises out of the alignment with what is.
Reality is what makes the present so vital, so different from the past and future, which are merely mental. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. The real is always with you. You need not wait to be what you are, only you must not allow your mind to go out of yourself in search. All experience is illusory, limited and temporal. Expect nothing from experience. Realization is not an experience.
Most of us want to feel better. We don't actually want to see that we're misperceiving things. But that's the core of spirituality. And then the only way to really wake up is to realize that the way you perceive yourself may not be true. And all the little garden variety ways that people suffer, their little anxieties, their depressions, their fears, their guilts, their shames, all of that. That there is simultaneously with a more relative way of working with that, which is there is a time and a place to do that. But there is a more core way of looking at any of those issues. What's the truth? How am I causing my own suffering through my own misperceptions? If suffering does arise through misperceiving, through perceiving things not as they actually are, then exactly how am I perceiving anything that's causing me pain or fear or anything? How am I misperceiving reality? It's very different, isn't it? If you find out, if it corrects itself, the result will be you'll feel a whole lot better. But the motivation is, how am I misperceiving? Of course, in teachings of waking up, in teachings about spiritual awakening and enlightenment, we go to the primary misperception, which is a misperception of self. It's not the only misperception. There's a whole host of other misperceptions about the world, about others, about, just about anything you or I believe in our hot heads is a misperception. That's a shocker when you realize that one. Everything you believe, those things called beliefs that we have and hold very valuable to us, a belief tells you exactly one of the ways in which you're misperceiving. There's no beliefs in reality. Reality doesn't need a belief. Reality is just the way things are. You don't have to believe in the way things are for them to be the way things are. You have to believe that things are not the way they are in order to perceive things other than they actually are. So we are taught also that if we just change what we believe, that's the salvation for us. There are some beliefs that are less destructive than others, certainly. Some beliefs are more in harmony with reality than others. But there's no such thing as one of them that are actually true. And when we really wake up, you can't miss that. When awakening to reality really happens, you can't actually miss my God, there's no such thing as a true belief. Reality itself is simple, clear, and unitary. There's nothing mysterious about it. The mystery all has to do with misperception. Boy, when we start misperceiving, things are very mysterious. Very murky. Lots of shades of gray, you know? But when we really start to wake up from our misperceptions, we realize reality isn't mysterious. Life isn't a big mystery. It's not really an overly complex thing. Freedom isn't complex. Enlightenment isn't complex. It's actually the opposite. It is the most simple thing. It is the most simple perception, right? So I want to help people not only to see spiritual inquiry, which I talk about, inquiry about what am I, but the viewpoint of inquiry is what's really important. It's really looking at what is true in anything. True about you, true about your perception of another, true about the world, true about God, true about any moment that causes suffering. Once you get the notion, or start to work with the notion, that suffering in any form is caused by a misperception. And a misperception is caused by a belief, an idea that's grabbed, that's believed, a conclusion. Once you get that very, very simple idea, the whole way you look at things starts to shift. Because no longer, when you get uncomfortable, are you asking yourself, how do I feel more comfortable? Although, of course, you want to, everybody does. But you're not necessarily asking yourself, how do I feel more comfortable? You're asking myself, how do I perceive more clearly? What's the truth here? Do you see how radical this actually is? Usually when we suffer, we want to change everything except the way we're perceiving. Right? Right? You change, this change. If the world changes, if that change, you know. And even if we change our perceiving, we want to perceive from one phony belief to another phony belief. But that's not the kind of change of perception I'm talking about. I'm talking about something very similar to what the Buddha was talking about when he said, the cause of suffering is ignorance. It's an innocent misunderstanding about the nature of reality. That's the cause. It has nothing to do with what is happening. It has nothing to do with what happened. And it has nothing to do with what might happen. It has to do with what we tell ourselves and told ourselves about what is happening, what did happen, or what may happen. It's about what we believe about the various events in our lives. And again, for most people, their primary belief is with their own existence. It's like they're born, and as soon as they get language, they form a belief about their birth. I am this little person, which becomes a big person. But as soon as you perceive, not through belief, not through the mind, not through the story, all of a sudden it's simple, it's not so. You and I, we're not limited to a particular person. No individual thing defines who and what we are. We're not actually perceiving from a particular body. But what we are is much more like the consciousness of the totality. The consciousness of of existence itself.
Reality is what makes the present so vital, so different from the past and future, which are merely mental. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. The real is always with you. You need not wait to be what you are, only you must not allow your mind to go out of yourself in search. All experience is illusory, limited and temporal. Expect nothing from experience. Realization is not an experience.
So as long as you want something, so long you will do that. So that want has to be very, very clear. What do you want? That is why all the time I ask you the question, what do you want? I want to be at peace with myself, you see. So that is an impossible goal for you, because everything you are doing to be at peace with yourself is the one that is destroying the peace that is already there. So you have set in motion the movement of thought, which is destroying the peace that is there. You see, I don't know if it is. If it is clear to you, I know it's not very clear. Anyway, it's very difficult to understand that all that you are doing is the impediment, is the one that is disturbing the harmony, the peace that is already there. Any movement in any direction on any level is a very destructive factor for the smooth functioning and the peaceful functioning of this living organism, which is not at all interested in your spiritual experiences. It has no interest in any one of those spiritual experiences, however extraordinary they may be. When once you have one spiritual experience, there is bound to be a demand for more and more of the same, and ultimately you will want to be in that permanent state. There is no such thing as permanent happiness, permanent bliss at all. I can say that probably, you see, you think that there is, because all those books talk of the eternal bliss, permanent bliss, you see, permanent happiness. And you know jolly well that, you see, it is not leading you anywhere. So the mechanism that is involved, the instrument that you are using is the one that keeps you going, because it does not know of anything else. It has come into being through so many years of hard work, effort and will. That itself is effort, that itself is will. You are wanting to be in a state of effortlessness through the use of effort is not going to succeed. So forget about the effortless state. It doesn't exist at all. So if you want to be in an effortless state through effort, how the hell are you going to achieve that goal? You forget that everything you are doing, any movement that is there, any want that is there, for whatever reason you want to be in an effortless state, is effort. So you cannot achieve the goal of effortlessness. Effortlessness is something which cannot be achieved through effort. So is there anything that you can do to stop the effort? Even that also is an effort. It's really a maddening thing. Thank God you have not pushed yourself really, see, into that corner. Then you see you will really go crazy. So you are frightened of that. It's impossible. You have to see that everything you are doing to be in that effortless state, for whatever reason you want to be in there, is effort. Even wanting not to use effort also is effort. The will, the effort, the total absence of will and the total absence of effort of all and every kind may be called an effortless state, but that effortless state is not something that you can achieve through effort, or not at all possible. I don't know. If you have ever understood, you see, the meaninglessness of what you are doing. So you can change the techniques, you can change the teachers, but basically and essentially, the very teaching that you are using to reach your goal is the obstacle. It doesn't matter what teaching you follow. If you question the teaching, unfortunately, you have to question the teacher himself, you see. So therein comes this sentiment. So something is wrong with me. One day I am going to understand. So if it is not possible for you to understand today, you are not going to understand, you see, at all. So the understanding is the demand, the absence of the demand for understanding. Either now or tomorrow. See, now there is no understanding necessary. The understanding is only for the purpose of understanding something tomorrow, not today. Today you don't have to understand a thing at all. It may sound funny to you, but that's the way, you see, it is. So what do you want to understand? You can't understand me at all. I've been talking, I don't know, for 20 days. You see. I can go on. You are not going to understand anything at all. It's not that it is difficult, it is so simple. The complex structure that is involved is the very thing that does not accept the simplicity of it. You see, that is really the problem. It can't be that simple. Because that structure is so complex that it doesn't want even to consider the possibility that it could be so simple. So you are going to understand tomorrow, not today. So tomorrow it's the same story, and then after 10 years it's the same story. So what do you do about this situation? We all have been through that. Actually, literally went mad.
There's something that needs to happen in my life before I can be at peace. Something happened in the past that should not have happened. Something is happening now that should not be happening. How do we make peace with the background unhappiness of our lives?
Yes, so you recognize the background unhappiness as not content-based, but as structural. It's the structure of the egoic mind to create that. And no matter what situation, if you haven't tackled or recognized the structure of the ego in yourself as certain thought forms that repeat themselves, no matter what situation you go into, they will come up in some new form, but basically the same structure.
I got it. I got it. So many people were writing about this on the web.
Yes.
The Secret to Happiness, everybody, page 115. There are 3 words that convey the secret of the art of living, the secret of all success and happiness. One with life. Being one with life is being one with now, you say. You then realize that you don't live your life, but life lives you. Life is the dancer, and you are the dance. I have to tell you, I love this book, but I was like, gee, I thought life was the dance, and I was the dancer. And there are a lot of people on the web who are saying the same thing. Can you explain how life is the dancer and we are the dance? Why aren't we the dancer?
Life is dancing the dance of form, one could say. Every human being and everything that exists is part of the dance of life. That which moves you, the very consciousness that animates your being, that animates every cell of your body, that produces thoughts too. The very consciousness that you are is the one universal, the one life. And that permeates everything. So the entire universe is permeated by that consciousness, by life, which is another word for God.
God.
I don't see God as an entity that is in a particular place somewhere, but as the essence, the intelligence, the animating life essence behind all life forms. It's the eternal.
The totality.
Yes.
So let me ask you the big question. You have no fear of death?
No, no. The ego has dissolved, and so only the ego fears death. I know there is no death.
You know there is no death. Okay, tell me how.
I have a little thing at the end of this chapter.
I know, you say the incontrovertible proof of immortality. I read that and I went, okay, well, I read that.
I've done a little thing I did there. Usually when people talk about immortality, they use certain arguments, perhaps from physics. They say the energy is destroyed. Energy can only become transformed.
That's right, transformed.
So the vital energy that is your life, because energy cannot be destroyed, must survive in some form. That's often the argument for the survival of that life. There is no death, only the form dissolves.
Okay, so continuing here, so there is no such thing as my life, and I don't have a life. I am life. I and life are one. It cannot be otherwise. So how could I lose my life? How can I lose something that I don't have in the first place? How can I lose something that I am? It is impossible. So what is happening here is, I just got it, hello, 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 bing, 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 bing. I got it. We are confusing the I am life force with our bodies.
Yes, yes.
We're confusing that.
Yes, that's right, that's right.
So when this dies and becomes the shell and dissipates and the atoms go wherever they go, back into the ground, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, we are confusing that which is the physical form, the human, we're confusing that with the being.
Yes, that's right.
And they are separate.
Reality is what makes the present so vital, so different from the past and future, which are merely mental. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. The real is always with you. You need not wait to be what you are, only you must not allow your mind to go out of yourself in search. All experience is illusory, limited and temporal. Expect nothing from experience. Realization is not an experience.
For example, one might say, how do I merge with the divine, right? Someone on the path who's that kind of a seeker. How can I merge with the divine? Why would that question even come if they hadn't heard of the divine? Something called the divine, right? If they never heard of the divine, would the question, how do I merge with the divine, come? So you can see from this example how much confusion and pressure we have in our brains because of some silly ideas that we've read or heard somewhere, you see. So now you had a perfect example of the way I like to say that all questions are resolved. Because did you get an answer?
No.
The question the question went away, didn't it?
Yeah.
When the question goes away, it's over. Unanswered. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So really, it's not that there's no answer that is a problem, is it?
Yeah.
The only problem is that there's a question.
That for sure.
So you had a very excellent example there of how I like to speak, you know. Without the answers that are already in your head, like there's a divine, or like you shouldn't be the doer, or whatever, without that answer already in the head, no questions would arise. You have the answer first. First you have the answer. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
And then the question comes second. So what we're doing really one way I can speak of what liberation is actually, it's the end of these questions, that's all. It's the end of any questions from one way of looking at it. There are some other things about liberation, but from this, about what we're speaking about now, liberation just means it's the end of seeking, isn't it? And what does the end of seeking mean? It means there's no longer any beliefs in my head that there's something more I need to attain, therefore I need to seek for it. See? It's coming to see completely that every single thought that's ever been put into this head has been put into this head. And not one of them is original, not one. Einstein's theory of relativity was not an original thought. It came from all the other data that was in his head, and somehow magically it got put together in this particular person's brain, and it came out, the theory of relativity, E equals mc squared. But none of those thoughts were original. You see? So when we really embrace this, knowing that there's no creator in here, like you said, no controller and no doer, there's also no creator as well. Same thing. There's no creator of thoughts, is there? Every thought that you have, you can see for yourself, just appears spontaneously.
Comes and goes.
Comes and goes, and you don't create it. So I think that's a great insight that you had, and actually an experiential insight, because you saw the result of dropping that question. That was relief, wasn't it? Yeah. Now, when all the questions are dropped, because we realize all the answers have only been programmed in there by ignorance, actually. All of their answers are not true, are they? They're all ignorance. There's no truth, they're ignorance. When we really embrace that they're all ignorance, then all of our questions end, all of our philosophical questions, not our questions of how to fix my computer or put oil in my car, something like that. Those questions, the brain is great at resolving, Yeah. But the philosophies of life, the brain isn't the tool for that. And there's no other tool either. What we're doing is coming to a very, 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 very simple way to live this life. That means no philosophical questions about what's going on, Here and now, what is. That's so simple, isn't it? Here and now, whatever is. Let's look together now. Let's take a holiday right now. Look. See this? There's only now, right? Anything that needs to be understood about this moment? No. Nothing. Are we ready to really embrace that? It takes a mature person. That's enough. I'm done. This is enough for me. Really simple, huh? Really simple. This is enough for me. And I don't know anything.
Can you repeat this is a...
Let me just see if my volume is loud enough. Sorry about that.
It's okay, the sound, but I didn't get
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, my input's fine. So I say, looking together here and now, right? Ultimate simplicity, right? So simple. You see the simplicity? Anything can be understood about this here and now moment?
There is nothing to understand.
No. So I say, is that enough for you? Is it enough to be this simple?
That's a good question.
It's the question. It's the question I've been asking people a little bit lately, and I will continue. And why is that? Because for almost everyone, it's the rare person that's enough for. For almost everyone, it's not enough. They need to understand something, like what happened in their past that makes them act as they are right this moment, you see, or something like this. Or what happens after death, or how do I get enlightened? You see, these kind of philosophical questions. What's the meaning of life? Where have I come from? These kind of questions, almost no one is, in my words, mature enough to drop that nonsense. See? To recognize as you do now the utter simplicity of what's true, actually. Isn't this so true? So utterly simple? I honestly don't care to understand any of this stuff we talk about. I only use words to bring the inquirer to the point of not needing any words. or any seeking anymore. That's the only reason, otherwise no words are needed. You see. So now I say, look and see. This, what is, there's only now, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Past has to be a concept, because where is it? And the future, where is it? I don't see it myself. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think so. I say, look, there's nothing behind the curtain of now. That's an American expression. Like on stage, there's a curtain. There's nothing behind the curtain. Look now, there's nothing behind the curtain. This is it. You see, this is it. And what can possibly need to be understood about this? Look. Or described even. Described. How can it even be spoken about, really? You know, I try to use words that will point to this so you see for yourself, but really, what words can be said? And it's so, first of all, obvious. It's not deep, it's not subtle, it's not transcendent, it's not elusive. It is obvious, isn't it? When I care to look. It's the most obvious thing in the entire world, isn't it? Here now. And it's utterly simple. And when you're ready for that, you know, this is liberation.
It's a bit frightening.
I know. I totally hear you. I get it. I get it. I get it. Yes, it is. And why is it frightening? Let's find out together. Because haven't we been taught our whole life that to value understanding, right? And descriptions and mental conceptual beliefs. We've been taught to value these things, haven't we? These are very valuable. These things are our self, aren't they? The self. These are the self, our beliefs, our rationalizations, our understandings. This is, I understand about God. You know, that's me, isn't it? That belief is who I am, right? A Catholic or Jew or whatever, you see?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I say to you, all of that stuff is simply not true, and are you ready for this, not knowing anything? Well, yes, there's fear because you're losing the self. You see, you're losing everything you ever believed in, right? You see, and it's a lot. It's a lot, you know. It's also giving up the controller, because another word for the controller is the creator, the doer, the understander. You know, the understander, right? The philosopher. All of these little guys in here that really don't exist. You see. But I'll tell you something. If you say it's a little scary, this means you recognize what I'm saying, and that's really good. Really good. Because if you didn't recognize what I was saying, there would be no fear.
Feel a little ball in the belly, you know?
Good. That's good. But see for yourself, though, you know, this is the whole point, you know, now that we've spoken about this, because this is actually the end. There's nothing more. It's simple, you know. Utter simplicity is the end. This simplicity that we're speaking about, so simple. So, you know, as you're listening back to this tape, and when you're looking into it and see that it's true, there's nothing that can be understood about this moment, is there? That means if there's nothing that can be understood about this moment, then there's no need for an understander, is there? Someone to understand.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? If there's no philosophy that can be used to describe this moment, then there's no need for a philosopher in here, a self, see? If there's no one creating this moment, is anyone creating this moment?
No.
Then there's no need for a creator in here, is there? The self, out. Fired. You see what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Good. And is there anything being to do in this moment, to create this moment, any doing needed to create this moment? Doesn't it just appear spontaneously?
Yeah, it does.
So then there's no need for a doer in there either, is there? That doer is gone. See?
It is not events that disturb people, it is their judgment concerning them. Death, for example, is nothing frightening, otherwise it would have frightened Socrates. But the judgment that death is frightening, now that is something to be afraid of. So when we are frustrated, angry or unhappy, never hold anyone except ourselves, that is our judgments, accountable. When we are frustrated, angry or unhappy, never hold anyone except ourselves, that is to say our judgments, accountable. An ignorant person is inclined to blame others for his own misfortune. To blame oneself is proof of progress, but the wise man never has to blame another or himself. So you look to the root cause of where unhappiness arises, where upset arises, not the situation. It's my judgment about the situation. A vital teaching. And as you practice that, gradually you become free of attachment to your mind. You gradually disidentify from what your mind is saying. And gradually more spaciousness arises in you as you disidentify from the judgment of your mind by recognizing it as a judgment. So that's the work, you could call it. That's the practice. And life continuously gives you stuff to practice with. Stuff happens continuously. And of course, if you say, I want to have some peace and quiet, but life doesn't allow you. And if you do get peace and quiet, then that becomes the problem. There's nothing happening anymore. And now there's a little bit of advice of how to approach things so that you become free of the dependency on externals. In the case of particular things that delight you or benefit you or to which you have grown attached, remind yourself of what they are. Start with things of little value. If it is a piece of china that you like, for instance, say, I am fond of a piece of china. Because otherwise the mind says, this is the precious thing from so-and-so that I inherited, and that's it. It's a piece of china. Yes, but I bought it at Sotheby's it's a piece of china. Okay, so then, if you discover attachment, you say, oh, I'm fond of a piece of china. When it breaks, then you won't be as disconcerted. Now the next step here is where you go, oh. When giving your wife or child a kiss, repeat to yourself, I'm kissing a mortal. Then you won't be as distraught if they are taken from you. Of course, it's a fact. You are kissing a mortal. You are kissing a mortal, aren't you? Yes, it's a fact. Of course, the mind says, yeah, but why should I remind myself of that? Well, it might seem a little extreme to you, but just to have the, you don't have to say that verbally, but but to know at the back of your mind that any human being that you're with, or yourself, yes, you are mortals, the end could come at any moment. Of course it could. I'm kissing a mortal. And now comes a little bit some other piece of advice. They're all very closely related, of course. Whenever planning an action mentally, rehearse what the plan entails. If you're heading out to bathe, picture to yourself the typical scene at the bathhouse. That's where they used to go to bathe. People splashing, pushing, yelling, and pinching your clothes. You will complete the act with more composure if you say at the outset, I want a bath, but at the same time, I want to keep my will aligned with nature. So you know what you want. That's one aim that you have. Of course, you will go there to have a bath, but that's not all. I also want what he calls keep my will aligned with nature, means not to fall out of alignment with the present moment and the flow of life internally, not to step out of alignment with that, to keep my will aligned with that. In other words, let's translate it into our terminology. I'm going there to have a bath, but I'm also going there to stay present. So you have an inner aim and an outer aim. So what he's actually saying is, don't have just outer aims, because then you get lost in the outer. As you pursue your outer aims, remind yourself that you have also an inner aim that's even more important than the outer aim, and that is to stay present as you engage in action and do things. So that's extremely useful to remember, because otherwise you go into situations and they don't unfold as they should, the mind says, and you get upset. And upset, by the way, is a form of suffering. Anger is a form of suffering. No, the egoic mind doesn't know that. The egoic mind, I have a right to be angry in this situation, but you're suffering. Suffering? No, I'm not suffering. Now, if you look into your body, then you'll know that you're suffering, because if you look and see what the anger does to the physiology of the body, to your heart, to your breathing, to the circulation of your blood, and so on, you realize that your body is actually suffering from this emotional state. It is suffering. For the first time, they discovered it when they discovered 200 years ago, whenever it was, somebody was shot in the stomach and the hole just didn't heal. So that was the first person. They could peer into his stomach and see when he got angry, the lining of the stomach became red. The first time they saw that. Wow. And many other things happen in the body. So it is a form of suffering. And so, two aims. I'm here to get from A to B, but I'm also here to practice presence, to be present. I'm here to discuss the important business deal, but I'm also here to be present. The two, you have the inner aim and the outer aim. That's what he is saying. If you forget the inner, you get lost in stuff, and it overpowers you, and you get overwhelmed, and life becomes frustrating. Lost in externals, as he would say. Externals, all that matters. I want a bath, but at the same time I want to keep my will aligned with nature. Do this with every act. That way, if something occurs to spoil your bath, you will have ready the thought, well, this was not my only intention. I also meant to keep my will in line with nature, which is impossible if I go all to pieces whenever anything bad happens. If you go all to pieces when something bad happens, of course, you're not aligned with the flow of life. You're not aligned with what is in the present moment. That's the dysfunction. Wonderful teaching. And it's as relevant now as it was then. Sickness is a problem for the body, not the mind, unless the mind decides that it is a problem. Lameness, too, is the body's problem, not the mind's. Of course, he was talking from experience. Say this to yourself, whatever the circumstance, and you will find without fail that the problem pertains to something else, not to you. In other words, you can be free of problems. Another way of putting it, there is no problem. There only is what is. And that's an incredible liberation if you can go through life realizing that there are no problems, there are only situations. If you can live that, then you're a master. Living as a master. There are no problems, only situations.
The most happy people in the world are not the people who have nothing impinging upon them, people who are completely without responsibilities, people who get to do basically whatever the hell they want in life because of the way life worked out for them. It just so happens they don't end up to be the truly happy people in life. So certainly getting everything we want doesn't make us happy. Think how much stuff you have that you wanted. I mean, even the people in this room that maybe don't have a whole lot. But I think overwhelmingly, if you just think of all the things that not the things you really needed, like food and shelter and clothing, but the things you wanted. Remember that? Right? When God, the 18-inch TV is just, the 22 would be better. It just would, I want it. And, da-da-da-da-da. Just as an example. And we get what we want. Haven't we all just gotten so much of what we remember, of course, is we tend to remember when we didn't get what we wanted, right? I remember in 1962, I was denied my bottle by my mother, and I'm still upset by it, whatever. We remember that, right? We forget that yesterday I came home with a shopping bag full of crap that I didn't need, but I wanted, and I unloaded it, and I could have done with pretty much none of this, you know what I mean? But I wanted it, that kind of want, right? But we're not happy when we get what we want. Because if we were, then most of us in this room would just be so giddy with joy, we wouldn't even be able to stand ourselves. Think about it. How many things have you gotten that you've wanted in your whole life? In the past week, for God's sake. Just this morning when you reached for your toothbrush and you wanted it. Oh, it's there, thank God, I got what I wanted. If getting what we wanted made us happy, we would all be swimmingly happy, wouldn't we? Not everybody in the world, of course, because a lot of people in the world don't only not get what they want, but they don't even get what they need. So even though we may have our ideas of what's going to make us happy and be free and all these things, so often they don't actually stand up to actual human experience. Like I said, I don't think what we want is to be completely undisturbed by anything in life. I don't think that's actually what a human being wants in their deepest resources of their being. I don't want to suffer. I don't want to be disturbed. I basically want to be happy all the time. Show me how to live in bliss endlessly, and that'll be good enough for me. Well, most people would sign up for that for a while, but that is not the same thing as seeing something that fills you with a sense of awe and meaning. Maybe something that fills you with a sense of something that would be worthy of you serving, not just being served by. I think these are the things that actually contribute to happiness, which is actually a beautiful thing, because what it tells us is, to some extent, happiness, not in total, but happiness to some extent has a communal component to it. In other words, most people, overwhelming numbers of people, are not going to be happy if they're feeling very smashingly well, but everybody else in the world is suffering like a dog. But they just tend up to be the one in the 7 billion of us that's happy. I don't think that person necessarily is going to feel just fantastic, because their innate connectedness, which is where I think our real love and compassion comes from, far before we've realized any kind of true unity or oneness at a more existential level, but at just a more moment-to-moment, day-to-day human level, this is, I think, where compassion arises. It arises from some kind of intuition of a kind of unity. Otherwise, why would I care? So there is a kind of unity from the very beginning, and I think to connect in with this is so extraordinarily important.
Reality is what makes the present so vital, so different from the past and future, which are merely mental. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. The real is always with you. You need not wait to be what you are, only you must not allow your mind to go out of yourself in search. All experience is illusory, limited and temporal. Expect nothing from experience. Realization is not an experience.
I'm told it's a very, very ancient story of a Chinese farmer, a very wise man. So this Chinese farmer is supposed to live in a farm, a small farm, where he has a son, a small piece of land, and a horse for the son to use in farming. One day, the horse runs away. So neighbors get together to commiserate with the farmer. How bad luck it is. What a bad luck. We're sorry. I don't know how you're going to manage. Now your son won't have a horse to work with. The son, the wise farmer, said, maybe. Then the next day, the horse came back with 4 other wild horses. Neighbors came. What wonderful luck. Now we have 4 horses. The third day, the son tried to ride one of the wild horses, fell, broke his leg. Neighbors came again. And the farmer said, maybe. 4th day, government officers came to recruit strong, healthy farmers for the army. And they didn't, of course, take the farmer's son with a broken leg. So again the neighbors came and said, what good luck. Again the farmer said, maybe. And my point is, we have talked of 4 days or 5 days, the rest of the 360 days, you can complete the story. But my main point is, the deeper point I'm making is, no one can truly know what is good for him or not. How long will you think? You can't even think. So what you think is very good now may not be good the next day.
So there's a very nice quotation of Ramana Maharshi's on predestination, which I'd like to read out. He says, the ordainer controls the fate of souls in accordance with their prarabdha karma. Whatever is destined not to happen will not happen, try as you may. Whatever is destined to happen will happen, do what you may to prevent it. This is certain. The best course, therefore, is to remain silent. Now, of course, Ramana was not referring to just keeping quiet. He was referring to the silence of the mind, the thinking mind. So, predetermination, predestination, as Ramesh's concept, is something which has been echoed through the ages. It is the ego which resists this because it feels it is in control. The other thing is the concept of non-doership. Some people find it very hard to accept because their whole life has been in a mode of doership. But once again, it's important to realize that this concept of non-doership has been echoed by most of India's sages. If you look at Shirdi Sai Baba, Anand Mahima, Ramakrishna Paramhans, and the Bhagavad Gita itself, they all have spoken on the fact that you are not the doer. So, before you take a pot shot at this concept of non-doership, keep in mind that this is something which has come down through the ages, through the Indian spiritual masters. So surely they all can't be wrong. At least look at that and then investigate and see your own life's experience in the light of that concept. So these things should be kept in mind as far as predestination as well as non-doership is concerned. The other thing is that duality is the basis of manifestation. There's no problem with duality. Like we said, good and bad, beautiful and ugly, up and down, left and right, rich and poor, beautiful and ugly. That is the functioning of manifestation is based on duality. The issue is not duality, but dualism. In dualism, what happens is that within the structure of duality becomes established me versus the other. That is the problem. Me separate from the other. So the other is viewed as an object, and I become the subject of that object and I pass judgment on that object. Little realizing that I myself am an object. I am an object as much as the other is an object. The source is the subject, the one true subject. So this dualism is what needs to be studied, investigated, understood, and seen in a very clear light, not duality. Duality is just the mechanism of the foundation of the manifestation. The other thing is this argument that, this kind of teaching will make me immoral. Because I can do whatever I like because I'm not the doer, God is the doer, like we discussed it in a previous chapter. And Swami Vivekananda has put it so beautifully. He says, how can you even say that the teaching of Advaita can make you immoral? Because if you truly understand deep down that there's no separation between me and you, because the same consciousness functions through both of us, would you harm another? Would the self harm the self? Would consciousness harm consciousness if the understanding deep down was that it is the same consciousness which functions through both of us? So let's not get into this topic of morality, he has said in one of his lectures, which actually sums up the true meaning of Advaita. So, of course, it is the ego's defense. The first question which comes up is, oh, I can do what I like because I'm not doing it. But what these sages are saying is that just look deeper. Understand what is being said here. Because in any case, if we hate someone else, if we feel ill towards someone else, let's not forget the fact that that feeling of hate is within us. We are hating ourselves because the feeling of ill will, spite, jealousy, envy, hatred is our feeling in here. It's got really nothing to do with the other. So to feel that for the other is to feel it for yourself. The other may not even be aware of your feelings towards him. So it all boils down ultimately to you.
Reality is what makes the present so vital, so different from the past and future, which are merely mental. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. If you need time to achieve something, it must be false. The real is always with you. You need not wait to be what you are, only you must not allow your mind to go out of yourself in search. All experience is illusory, limited and temporal. Expect nothing from experience. Realization is not an experience. All limitation is imaginary. Only the unlimited is real. Oh, and this is a beautiful one. The mirror reflects the image, but the image does not improve the mirror. You are neither the mirror nor the image in the mirror. Having perfected the mirror so that it reflects correctly, truly, you can turn the mirror round and see in it a true reflection of yourself. True as far as the mirror can reflect. But the reflection is not yourself. You are the seer of the reflection. Do understand it clearly. Whatever you may perceive, you are not what you perceive. Questioner, someone asks him.
Yes.
If both dream and escape from dream are imaginings, what is the way out? Nisargadatta. There is no need of a way out. Don't you see that a way out is also part of the dream? All you have to do is see the dream as a dream. Questioner. If I start the practice of dismissing everything as a dream, where will it lead me? Nisargadatta. Wherever it leads you, it will be a dream. And then I'm going to skip a few here for time, but you still imagine that truth needs pointing at and telling you, look, here is truth. It is not so. Truth is not the result of an effort, the end of a road. It is here and now, in the very longing and the search for it. It is nearer than the mind and the body, nearer than the sense I am. You do not see it because you look too far away from yourself. You are taking duality so much for granted that you do not even notice it, while to me, variety and diversity do not create separation. You imagine reality to stand apart from names and forms, while to me, names and forms are the ever-changing expressions of reality and not apart from it. You ask for the proof of truth, while to me, all existence is the proof. You separate existence from being and being from reality, while to me, it is all one. Nothing is me is the first step. Everything is me is the next. Both hang on the idea there is a world. When this too is given up, you remain what you are, the non-dual self. You are it here and now, but your vision is obstructed by your false ideas about yourself. Love says, I am everything. Wisdom says, I am nothing. Between the two, my life flows. And the final one I'll read, and this sums it up. Without words, what is there to understand? The need for understanding arises from misunderstanding.
Yes.
The confusion is all in the mind.
It's all in the mind.